Good afternoon and welcome to another video lesson. Today we are discussing Jack London's novel The Sea-Wolf, a novel which we have been studying for a few weeks. We have been dealing with it in excerpts for the purpose of saving time, as well as simply working with the characterization and the conflicts that arise in order to understand the general main concepts of the story. What I'm hoping in this video to do is discuss each aspect a little bit more in detail. You've been spending a considerable amount of time just reading in class, and this, I hope, will help you come to a better understanding. The basic premise of the story is that Humphrey Van Weyden, our unlikely hero, is taken out of his comfort zone and placed in a setting, in a circumstance, in which he must survive or die, basically. It's an interesting experience for him. He has no familiarity with this at all. Our character, Humphrey Van Weyden, has to come to terms with reality, come to terms with a life the way it's actually lived, and not this world of books which he so well knows. Our protagonist, as I've said, is Humphrey Van Weyden. Also, when he was in school, he was known as Sissy Van Weyden. He is small of build, he is frail, he's weak. He talks several times about him being more effeminate, not necessarily in personality and disposition, but he is not a manly man. He is not a man that splits wood, that builds houses, not a man that fights and drinks and quarrels, not a man that makes his own way. Wolf Larsen points out very quickly that he's living on his father's trust. His father passes away, leaves the family a whole bunch of money. Humphrey Van Weyden goes to boarding school and becomes a scholar. Being a scholar is certainly not a bad thing, but as far as heroes go, a bookworm is not our hero. This story is told in first-person point of view. It follows a linear structure. It deals primarily with a flashback, dealing specifically with our protagonist. Remember, in literature, the protagonist is the main character. All of the major conflicts are theirs, and the way in which they encounter and then deal with these conflicts and the outcomes or resolutions of the conflicts lead us to the big picture that the author's trying to convey to us. Wolf Larsen is the antagonist. After Humphrey falls off the ship, he's rescued on a sealing schooner. A schooner is a mid-sized sailboat. And the captain, Wolf Larsen, is the absolute baddest man that's ever lived. He is strong, he is powerful, he is muscular, he is aggressive, commanding, he is defiant, he is feared, he is an exaggeration. He is himself a hyperbole of manliness. Even his philosophy of life is this whole fight and survive aspect. He is everything that Humphrey is not. What London creates in this novel is really quite remarkable. Jack London's well known for Call of the Wild and White Fang, two nature stories dealing with animals, and really those stories are written at a middle school reading level. So when you encounter Jack London's The Sea-Wolf and you look at the writing structure, you look at the characters, you look at the conflicts, you look at the language, I'm sure many of you have been challenged by the language of the story. He really does create a remarkable novel. He builds two perfect main characters, Wolf Larsen and Humphrey Van Weyden. Humphrey Van Weyden's our protagonist, our main character, and Wolf Larsen is our antagonist. And almost every aspect, if we were to do a character contrast, you would be able to list polar opposites. In literary academics, it's called a binary opposition, binary meaning two, and opposition indicating opposites. Similar to good and evil, big and small, light and dark, courage and fear, strength and weakness. Those are binary oppositions, and this novel presents very strong, powerful oppositions. Almost the entirety of the story is this coming together of oppositions and what happens when those opposites take place. As I mentioned briefly, Jack London's use of language is spectacular in this novel, but it makes a lot of sense. It's important that we realize that our narrator is a rich, wealthy, sophisticated, high-cultured, art, music, literature, philosophy, all those things, and well-educated. On his own through extensive reading, but also through going to the best schools that money can buy. We wouldn't expect Humphrey Van Weyden to narrate a story in common, ordinary language such as is seen in White Fang and The Call of the Wild. It wouldn't make sense. It could happen if it was a third-person narration, but it's not. Our protagonist is our narrator, and in order for us to understand any of the story through the eyes of our protagonist, we have to deal with the reality that the high-level language you encounter leads to the characterization of our protagonist. We realize that he is very intelligent, that he is very well educated, he is proper, he has manners, he is cultured, he has never seen the rough part of life. He has seen only the beautiful parts of life, and it's that setup. It's that use of language, that characterization, that combination of a protagonist and narrator that lets us experience how out of place Humphrey Van Weyden is when he goes on board. Once he's on board the Ghost, he is confronted with a world he's never even imagined. It is dirty, it is filthy, it is violent, it is blunt, it is vulgar, it is offensive, it is foul, it is destructive, it is everything in reality that Humphrey's never even acknowledged. And it's not so much balancing the good and the bad, like everything. There's good and bad in the world and in life. Humphrey Van Weyden ends up on a ship that the characters later call a hell ship. They compare Wolf Larsen to the devil himself. And really, in many instances, we see that comparison. Humphrey Van Weyden is completely out of his element. He is offended. He is scared. He is overwhelmed with the graphic reality of life on this ship. The other aspect that's really important is the use of dialogue. We get some diction. Diction is when an author intentionally misspells things so that we hear how the characters would talk. You see that with the cook, and you see that with some of the... You see it with Johnson. You see it with some other characters that are from different countries. And it just helps make things more realistic. But the most important dialogue exists between Wolf Larsen and Humphrey Van Weyden. Really, their dialogue, their conversations, become the only common ground they have. There would be no other way for them to develop a respect for each other, to have interactions together, if it weren't for their interest in philosophy and things academic. The language that builds the dialogue reveals many of the major ideas, many of the conflicts, and it really is essential that that dialogue is so good. We learn more about our narrator and our protagonist, but we also learn so much about our antagonist through the dialogue. We get the inner workings of their mind. Several times, as we've been reading through, I have called attention to the opposing worldviews of our protagonist and antagonist. As I just said earlier, they are in complete opposites. Wolf Larsen is a complete materialist. He believes in this world, as it is lived. As long as he is breathing, that is life. When he stops breathing, when he stops living, it's done. There is no afterlife, there is no heaven, there is no reason for him to behave good, for him to have virtue, for him to do the right thing. And there are many conversations they have about what is the right thing and why would you do it. Wolf Larsen believes completely that it is an eye for an eye, a dog eat dog, social Darwinism world. He talks about this yeasty ferment, and he talks about it in terms of piggishness, that all living things seek to eat and destroy lesser, weaker living things in order that they may continue living. And that the only point of living is accumulating more, that piggishness, that betterment. I will gather more money, I will have more power, I will do more that I want, I will seek my own joys and my own pleasures, and I will destroy anyone who gets in my way. For Wolf Larsen, this opposing worldview, it really does strike that element that there is no point in trying to do anything good for any other human being, because by doing something good for someone else, you make yourself weaker for your enemies, and that you may be destroyed by helping them become stronger. Now, we say opposing worldviews. Humphrey Van Weyden, complete opposite. He is what we're all taught to be morally correct and righteous, to help your fellow man, to care about a community, to care about your family, to help those in need, no matter what it is, in deed, action, whatever, to do the right thing. And the right thing isn't based on selfishness, like Wolf Larsen. The right thing is in doing what is good and what is just and what is fair and what is right. Humphrey Van Weyden believes in God, believes in heaven, believes that we do all of these good things because it pleases God, and in pleasing God we go to heaven when we die. Humphrey Van Weyden is supposed to symbolize all that is good with society. That idea of education and doing the best for yourself and for others, and for caring about people, caring about the less fortunate and trying to help them out. Wolf Larsen isn't that. It is this contrast, it is these opposing worldviews that build the whole story, because it's probably the most essential component of the whole story. A theme in literature is the major aspect of life, the idea or the concept of human nature, of how the world works, of what it is to be alive, of what it is to struggle and survive and overcome obstacles and all of these things. It is the major concept that when you get to the end of a story, you can say the author was trying to tell the reader this, that we may face the darkest times in the world, but we will come out right in the end. Or in Macbeth, that evil is destined to be defeated. Those are themes. It is major concepts that we can see in the real world. It's important. Authors write for that. They want to teach the reader something about life and living, and those are themes.